This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. A 7-goal thriller ends in defeat for the leaky Lionesses. But was a plateau inevitable? Do players deserve better? Silly question, of course they do, as Northern Ireland question conditions in Croatia. We'll look at how they and the other home nations got on in the Euro 2025 playoffs. Our focus also turns to the next round of fixtures. We'll discuss Monday night's Ballon d'Or as well, plus we'll take your questions. And that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel we have today. What a week, Suzanne Wrack. How are you?
Good. Sort of glad international football's back, but it's tiring work.
It's relentless, isn't it? It's like being on a little treadmill, like a hamster. But they like it. We like it. Hopefully. Maybe. I don't know. Really weird analogy to start the pod with. Don't know why I did that. Emma Sanders, long time no see. Have you been busy up in Cov, getting all big time nowadays?
Oh God, you said you were going to do that off air, and I thought surely she's not actually going to say that on air.
Of course, I'm going to say it.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm currently freezing in my hotel room. I was just saying to producer Silas off air that I've had to turn on the heating full blast because I'm in a Premier Inn in Coventry. So I have had better mornings.
Oh, that is the epitome. That to me sums up International Week. You're a Premier Inn in Coventry with some wonderful wall art behind you.
Thank you.
You know, could hang in the Tate. Ameé Ruszkai, it has also been ages. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I thought, when you were texting asking if I could come on the show, I thought, God, nobody else must be available. I'll get my debut for the season.
Unbelievable. That is not true at all. We're only into the 7th pod of the season, the 7th week. Where's the time going? And you've both been on the list, and I'm delighted to have you with us today. There's only one place to start. It's with the Lionesses, or the leaky Lionesses, as Susie named them in her match report. I'm going to hope that moniker doesn't stick. They really need to do something to make sure it doesn't. They secured their spot, obviously, at Euro 2025 back in July and kicked off the new international season with a friendly against Germany on Friday night. 45,000 at Wembley, treated to a 7-goal thriller. It finished England 3, Germany 4, but the Germans, under a new manager, stormed into a 3-goal lead thanks to a brace from Bayern Munich's Julia Gwynn and a strike from her Bundesliga teammate Clara Bull. England dug deep. They pulled 2 back before the break. Georgia Stanway with a penalty and then a lovely finish just 3 minutes later. But then Sarah de Brits converted from the spot in the second half, extending Germany's lead before Lucy Bronze added another for the Lionesses. Listen, it was only a friendly, Susie, but I think it's fair to say England will be disappointed and frustrated, especially by their defensive performance. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, I mean, first off, leaky Lionesses is not me. It's in the headline and we don't write the headlines. I wouldn't come up with something that crap.
Wow. Have you just literally thrown the headline makers of The Guardian right under the bus and rolled over?
No, to be fair, it's a good headline, isn't it? But like written in a piece would be weird. But and it's factually accurate. So, it's short. It will fit in the the headline box in the paper and that kind of thing. It was a weird game, right? Like it was. I mean, if you were sat there as a neutral, it was a lot of fun. Just crazy game. I can't think of any other way to describe it other than like frankly ridiculous. I mean, defensively appalling from both teams. Kind of the legacy of what happens if you like put out a starting 11 based on sort of experience and longevity in the team over like who's in form at the moment. It's obvious. It's been obvious for quite a while that Leah Williamson just does not look herself at the moment. And I don't think she really completely has. She's had some good games here and there, but I don't think she's looked properly herself since she came back from her ACL injury. And I think that's a sign that there's, perhaps more going on there and that, maybe not enough care is being taken to sort of kind of get her back to best before they bring her back, which is a real shame. But I don't really, don't know what's going on behind the scenes there that means that, there's kind of this desire to keep playing her despite her not looking at her best. And I don't think that's her fault. But yeah, why you're not playing Alex Greenwood, particularly when Millie Bright and Chelsea, I'd say, haven't defensively looked that incredible this season. It just feels really, really kind of short-sighted. But I think that was the case across the pitch as well.
Yeah, look, there's been a lot of fascinating debate about it. The starting lineup raised a few eyebrows, the tried and tested 11, rather than giving newer faces, perhaps who've been on better form, a chance. You mentioned Alex Greenwood there. Leah Williamson started instead. Ella Toone as well started instead of Jess Park, who was on the bench. The counter-argument to that, though, is that Hannah Hampton obviously got the nod over Mary Earps in goal, and we'll discuss that in a minute. But this is what Sarina Wiegman said about her post-match selection. We're playing Germany, that's a high-level team. Players are knocking on the door, competing for minutes, and I'm not going to make changes just for the sake of it. I'm going to start getting ready for July the 2nd. All of my decisions are based on that. July the 2nd, obviously, when the European Championships kick off. What did you make of her decisions, Amy?
Yeah, I thought it was weird, and I know we're going to talk about the USA later, but I was looking at some of the stuff that, Emma Hayes has been doing with those friendlies, which obviously don't mean anything. I know they don't have a major tournament next summer, but, off the back of an Olympics, she's, wheeling out all the, player pool, giving everybody a good look, giving them a chance. And it just felt like, this 11 that you've put out like the back of your hand. Even Hannah Hampton's had quite a lot of starts this season. She's not an unknown player. This 11 like the back of your hand, and you're playing a friendly. Like, do you need to put out a team that you know everything about? Can you not give somebody else a chance? And I think what creates a bit more of a problem is that I think against South Africa tonight, you're probably going to see a heavily rotated team, right? So the likes of Jess Park might get a go, Aggie Beaver-Jones, Alex Greenwood, but it's about putting them into your 11, not having an A team and a B team, because then when you actually want to put Greenwood in, you needed to have the partnership with Bright. When you put Park in, you needed to have the partnership with Walsh and Stanway, yada, yada, yada. So I think having them so separate, you can say at the end of the window, oh, look, she gave chances to players, but, when they then come into the proper 11 further down the line, they're probably not going to have those partnerships. And that's kind of the wider issue, I think, for me when I look at it.
There must be a reason for it, because I go back to the criticism that Gareth Southgate was receiving going into the men's Euros this year. And it was very similar. You've got all these fantastic players on the bench. Why aren't you kind of, trying them from the start, moving them about a bit? I mean, they're using them as subs, obviously, and to, in a good way. But for some reason, it's just, I don't understand for the same reason, but none of us are coaches. But what I do understand is exactly as Susie said, defensively, both sides were awful. Germany looked equally as vulnerable at the back. It was quite a worry, Emma, wasn't it, for both sides, how easily they were able to be cut open at times.
Yeah, it was a concern. And I asked Sarina afterwards in the post-match press conference if she was concerned by how easy it was in terms of, Germany being able to exploit their weaknesses. And I know she said beforehand that that's what she wanted. She wanted to be able to see where they were weak so that obviously they could work on that in time for the Euros. But she sort of kind of dodged the question, almost said in a way she wasn't really that concerned without really saying it, which in itself to me was, I just felt, even a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, she probably would have fronted that and said, yes, we weren't good enough, we need to be better on the ball. But I think in recent times, the answer tends to be, well, other teams are improving, as opposed to really sort of taking it on the head that actually England were just poor. And for me, that's been maybe a bit of a shift in mentality with this England team that, yes, other teams have improved. That is a fact. She isn't lying there. That's 100% true. But at one point, England were the team to beat, and I don't think they are now. And I think that sort of kind of lack of accountability maybe is almost just going into teams and allowing teams like Germany to come to Wembley and to play against England and really take their game, where, 2 years ago it was the other way around. It was England taking their game to Germany at Wembley. So for me, there has just been a shift in mentality where perhaps England aren't seen as these invincibles anymore. They're not seen as the peak of European football. And they don't look like a team that looks confident when they're defending the ball.
There were positives. I think there were a few positives to take, actually. You know me, I'm a glass half full kind of person, but certainly, some of the performances of the front line, Susie, Lauren Hemp, Alessia Russo, Beth Mead, all looked really dangerous. I mean, I'm nervous to say it was the best attacking display we've seen from England in a while, because I think there were so many other fallibilities that, it has to be a whole team attacking performance, really, and that means defensively as well, weird as that sounds. But what did you think of the front line? Could they have done more? Are we seeing them back at their potent best or not?
I mean, they're getting there. I thought Alessia Russo in particular was really impressive relative to sort of performance we've seen of her of late for England and Arsenal. And I think having Mead and Hemp either side of her works really well, because they're both players that like to come inside. So where she likes to kind of drift deep a little bit or kind of move out wide, they're able to sort of rotate into the middle, and that helps that, because quite often at Arsenal you see her sort of drift wide and there's no one in the box. There's no one for her to put the ball into. So I think that dynamism basically up front was really, really nice to see. Solid performance offensively, that we've not England have been winning games here and there, but it's not necessarily been a particularly convincing. It's often felt quite laboured recently, and these goals felt a little bit less laboured in a weird way, despite the fact that they're obviously 3-0 down in 30 minutes and chasing the game from the start. But it did feel like that was a positive. But yeah, I mean, I agree with all of the points on rotation and stuff, and why don't they do it? I just don't. You mentioned Gareth Southgate not doing it as well. I just don't understand why you wouldn't make those tweaks.
There must be a reason. That's why I brought it up. There must be a reason that we as coaches therefore don't know. I always try and use the caveat behind the scenes that you don't know about injuries behind the scenes, what minutes players need, where they are mentally, for example. There are so many other nuances that we don't necessarily ever think about, because we look at what we think is the best starting 11, but we've not been privy to watching a full morning's training. We get 15 minutes to kind of work out what we think is best. And we've always said on this pod, in Sarina we trust, but I think it is right to hold a mirror up and say I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, one of the things Georgia Stanway said yesterday that I thought was interesting was she said something about them needing to find their unpredictability again, not in those exact words, but it was something along those lines. And how do you best do that, right? You bring in players that teams don't know. Teams understand these players now. They've been playing together for long enough and against teams for long enough that they've worked them out. Teams are able to sort of share the blueprint as to how you kind of get round this England side. They understand the players. They understand how they're going to move. And there was a little bit of an unpredictability to England at the Euros last time out that I think was really, really exciting, particularly off the bench. Russo and Toon were a little bit unknown, and that provided that kind of unpredictable energy that they needed. But now they're known, right? They're really known. They're known so well. So I feel like that's why they need it. But who knows? I'm just a journo.
Well, you are a journo, and a very important journo, and this is what you wrote in your article that Georgia Stanway said post-match. When the expectation is continuous, we're probably not able to live up to it. It's inevitable that at some point you're going to plateau. We've been with Sarina for 4 years now, so we'll get to a point where we can't continuously win because teams will figure us out and are getting better. That's where we have to work together to reinvent ourselves and change a little bit of tactics, change a bit here and there, and get the one up on the opposition again. As much as teams are evolving, we also have to evolve. We have to continue to make little tweaks to get that one up. That's exactly right, isn't it, Amy? It's time has moved on since that 2022 final, which of course they played against Germany.
Yeah, and I completely understand everything that Georgia says, and I get where she's coming from, and it makes sense. But again, I just can't help but go back to, but when you're reinventing yourself as a team, there is so much fresh blood to bring in. You can evolve. She's talking about kind of evolving as players and things like that, but the team can evolve. I don't think, there were 7 players in that team on Friday that started the Euro final as well as starting this game. And it just feels like if I don't know, again, I'm just a bit like, well, why is there not more changes? It's not like England don't have players sat there on the bench who are ready to play. Grace Clinton, no one scored more goals than WSL. Jess Park's been on fire. I've been really impressed with Aggie Beaver-Jones. I'm surprised she didn't get on. Alex Greenwood, we've talked about. It just feels so strange to be like, this team has the ability to evolve a little bit here and there with new players, and for some reason, it's just not happening. And I think as well, the fact that she put out such a regular team, that's what made the defensive performance so much more concerning. I know we talked about Williamson's form, and that's a whole strand of that. But if you put out a team that plays together so often, you would expect familiarity. You would expect them to understand each other. You would expect them to all be on the same page. And at times, they just did not look like they were on the same page, and that was probably the most concerning thing about it.
Yeah, you're right. And I tell you what, the theme of going through this match has been, we all seem a little bit perplexed because we know it's all in there, and I'm sure Sarina Wiegman and the players do as well. There was more refereeing controversy. Emma, Alessia Russo punished in the box, a decision that ultimately led to Germany's winner. Are England right to feel aggrieved about that? Are you surprised VAR didn't call the referee over to have a look at it?
I think they're certainly right to feel aggrieved. Sarina Wiegman was actually quite strong on that afterwards, saying, she didn't think it was a penalty. When I first saw it, I didn't think it was a penalty. I was really surprised that it had been given. I think when you see the replay, she goes in with a high boot, but she is quite a way off the player and then quite comfortably gets the ball afterwards, and the boot comes down. So I thought it was really, really, really harsh. But one, it's a friendly anyway, but secondly, I think in the grand scheme of things, Germany deserved to win that game. So I think it would have been more of a talking point had it really been the decider. I know it was in terms of the scoreline, but Germany deserved to win that game, and really they should have been, maybe 4 or 5-0 up after half an hour. So I don't think it really had any significant bearings in terms of changing the performance, changing the outcome, changing the reaction to the match. All it might have done is obviously got a draw, and people would have still been asking the same questions. Why have England conceded 4 goals, and why has there been a lack of rotation?
Yeah. Listen, before we move on to looking at tonight's game, which we'll only do very briefly, because if you're listening to the pod this afternoon, great, brilliant preview. If you're listening to the pod tomorrow, everything that we say will be out of date. I just want to kind of gauge from all of you, bearing in mind the Euros is just 9 months away, and that 9 months is going to absolutely fly by. Do you feel as if there's any reason to worry? And are there any European teams that are standing out in particular right now? Or is everybody just having this, lull into a major tournament? Susie?
Yeah, I think there are reasons to worry. I think Amy made a really good point about the defence, looking like it's not played together when it's a really, really experienced back line. Yeah, I think that is significant and cause for concern. I mean, there's time to bring in some of these young players still. We'll see what happens, but that is obvious cause for concern if your more experienced players aren't clicking in the way that they have done in recent seasons. In terms of other teams, no one is set on the world alight at the moment, but they're not necessarily playing difficult teams. You look, Netherlands beating Indonesia 15-0, France 3-0 over Jamaica. I mean, Spain probably had the toughest. They had a 1-1 draw in Canada the other day. No one is kind of setting the world alight, playing top level opposition. So yeah, there's issues everywhere, but there's something about the issues at England that do concern me.
Amy?
I think the left back position is still a concern for me. Because I know that Niamh Charles would have played if she'd have been fit, but the fact that Alex Greenwood's not playing means that you've got an entirely right-footed defence as well. It means that has all the implications on the build-up and just playing out from the back and so on and so forth. Depth in midfield concerns me beyond Walsh and Stanway. There's nobody else there. Certainly nobody that's getting a go. But I think, again, I think on other teams, you probably over tonight's games, and then over the next international break, when all the major teams in Europe are playing friendlies, that's where you're going to find out who's going to stand out. Who's, like Susie says, everybody's got issues, and this is the time to address them. And it's who emerges from that November, December window having fixed the most of their issues, that, you know, that's the priority. And at the moment, England don't. I know it's only one game out of the 4, but you don't look particularly close to ironing out the issues, and, you know, other teams will.
Em?
Yeah, similar sentiments to kind of what everyone else has said in terms of obviously the defensive concerns. But just to play devil's advocate, I suppose the talent pool that we've been discussing that's available is obviously available. So I'm kind of less concerned in a way, because there's obviously, you know, there's players there with serious quality, serious talent, that if England do sort of use these games and actually learn from them. So let's say, you know, they put into practice kind of all of the issues that was quite clearly exploited against Germany, and they deal with that come, I don't know, let's say February, then I think, you know, they're in a really strong position in terms of the options that England have, certainly in this within a starting 11. I think it's where maybe the squad depth concerns me a little bit more when you look at the likes of Spain and the options that they have. And even Germany now, like, they've got quite a young squad, obviously, with a new manager, and they looked pretty solid under new management there. So, you know, the overall depth concerns me a little bit. But certainly from a starting 11 point of view, I think England have enough there. So it's just about trying to put that together in time. And I think there is still plenty of time. It's just making sure that they deal with that ASAP, I think.
Yeah, well, they get a chance, although it's against very different opposition. Tonight, Tuesday, they're in Coventry hosting South Africa. Obviously, we're recording on a Tuesday morning, so we're not going to put too much focus on this game because it will be out of date. But are you expecting a much changed side, Susie? Serena Wiegman's pretty much told us that there will be.
Yeah, I mean, she said that we're gonna see changes. I mean, I would like to see some of those young players tested against, or less experienced players tested against, a team like Germany over South Africa. I think that would be like a more interesting test of how ready they are for the Euros in a way. But yeah, it's a very different type of game, and it's going to be interesting to see how the defence handle it as well, based on the performance the other day. They lost 5-0 to Denmark on Friday, was it, I think? So in theory it should be a fairly straightforward game for a team of England's quality, but as we've seen, things aren't that straightforward at the moment.
What's she going to be looking for, Emma, from her side? What key things?
I think she just wants consistency, and that's mainly out of possession as well as in possession. She's spoken a lot about the timing of the high press recently, which I think has been interesting. So she's talking about almost defending from the front and getting that right. And the gaps between like the front line, the midfield, and then the defence against Germany was absolutely horrendous. So I think it's making sure that structurally they're consistent for like the whole 90 minutes. I think that's what she wants to see.
And what do we expect from South Africa, Amy? Susie mentioned there they were beaten 5-0 the other day. It should be a straightforward win, but equally, how important is it for England to actually come up against non-European opposition?
Yeah, I'm quite interested by the game. I watched South Africa a little bit of the World Cup last year, and I was really impressed by them. Obviously, they got through to the knockout stages for the first time. They've got some really dangerous players on the counter. I think I'm particularly interested in what the defence comes out and looks like, what kind of defence Wiegman picks, but also there's some of the similar challenges are going to exist in this game that existed on Friday, because they are going to try and, just slice through England at the back. Yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing about it. I think in terms of the attack, you expect South Africa to kind of sit back and make it difficult for England, and it'll be a little bit like an attack v defence drill at times. But yeah, I'm particularly intrigued to see if they look better in transition defensively than they did on Friday. And I don't think they can look much worse, surely.
Yeah. Right, well, we shall find out later on. That's it for part one. In part two, we'll look ahead at the Euro 2025 hopes of the home nations and the Republic of Ireland, as well as catch up on Emma Hayes' USA and the latest in the Under-17 Women's World Cup. Welcome back to part 2 of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. So round 1 of the Euro 2025 playoffs kicked off on Friday to decide the final 7 spots at next summer's championships. It's been a year of change for Wales as they look to qualify for their first ever major tournament. Rhiannon Wilkinson was appointed head coach back in February and helped guide her side to the top of League B Group 4, securing promotion for the next edition of the Nations League. But their hopes of reaching Euro 2025 suffered a big blow in the first leg away to Slovakia as they fell to a 2-1 defeat in Poprad. Wales were a little bit disjointed. They went 2 goals down until Bristol City's Fionn Morgan halved the deficit in the closing minutes. Rhiannon Wilkinson described it as her team's worst performance. Susie, how much do they need to improve ahead of the second leg, and was it as bad as Rhiannon said?
I mean, it was pretty bad. Like, they were really poor. And I thought Slovakia were excellent, particularly Martina Sanovska. They found her really, really difficult to play against. She could have had 3 or 4 goals by the end of the match, really. Like, you know, it shouldn't be as tight as it is going into the second leg at all. The Slovakia are ranked 22 places below Wales. Like, this is, you know, a game they should be winning. I think they also hadn't won in 4 games prior as well. So, like, the big worry for me is that they didn't get the goal back until they had the likes of Fionn Morgan and Jess Fishlock on the pitch. And once Fishlock was on, you saw the impact that she has creatively, and like created a couple of chances before the goal. So, like, that's the worry for me, is like she's coming towards the end of her career realistically. And yeah, and she's been injured. Like, she's rushed back to make these 2 fixtures, but they're still relying on her to be the difference in big games like this. Yet they are, like, on paper, a far superior side. So, like, that is concerning. And there's a lot to work on defensively. Like, they conceded 2 goals from set pieces. You know, one from a corner that was sort of cleared and then put back in, and then the other from a free kick. But beyond defending set pieces, they were just carved open again and again and again and again. I think that's really concerning going into second game. That said, that Morgan goal is like a lifeline for them, right? Like, hopefully they can take that and the fact that it was such a poor performance as a little bit of a, like, we know we can play better. But yeah, it's a tough ask. I thought Slovakia were really, really brilliant.
Yeah, Jess Fishlock only fit enough to play for 25 minutes. They've got really big injury problems at the moment. They're obviously already without Sophie Ingle, who's out with an ACL injury. How much is it affecting them, Emma?
Yeah, I think it's affecting them a lot. And as Susie said, 100% Jess Fishlock came on and made the difference. And, you know, having her not fully fit for that, you know, that first hour or so was just really, really difficult for them. They are 100% being affected by the injuries. Obviously, Sophie Ingle, really important player for them. She controls a lot of, you know, that midfield. Her leadership, her experience in these games is just invaluable. But I do agree with what Susie said there at the end, where, you know, the fact they can almost play so poorly and still come home and be within a goal, I think is actually really encouraging, because they know that even if they just up their level by 5-10%, you know, they should have enough, and they have a real opportunity here to qualify for the Euros, because is it Georgia and the Republic of Ireland that they would face if they get through to round 2? So you would look at those fixtures and think, okay, Wales would fancy themselves, you know, they would think we've got a real chance here. So they need to keep those key players fit. They need Jess Fishlock to get through these playoffs 100%. It's just beyond that then. I then worry about them. Let's say they do get through and they do qualify for the tournament. Yeah, I just worry, will they have enough kind of depth and will they have enough experience within the squad then? 8 months' time, another kind of 8 months for Jess Fishlock to, sorry to say it, but to age is probably not a good thing.
No, that home advantage, though, Amy, could be really key for the return leg on Tuesday night at the Cardiff City Stadium. Big crowd expected. Is that going to help them progress to round 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that they should be approaching that game is like, look, we were awful in the first leg. All we need to do is, you know, win this game 2-0. And, you know, we're into the next round. We've got all these fans come out to watch us. We've got the home advantage. You know, everybody's on our side, and we just need to go out there and show that we're the better team. And, you know, I think if you approach it in a way like that, I think, you know, how could you not be fired up for that game? if you're Wales. Like, I think they should be fired up for it to show everybody what they're about. They want to put wrongs right, and go out and do it. And I have to say as well, the Slovakia free kick, if you've not seen it, go and watch it because it's fantastic. The way she hits the ball, it's just no nonsense, just flies over the wall and in. Honestly, I saw it and I was like, that is such a good free kick. I loved it.
I'll check that one out for sure. Scotland. Let's have a look at Scotland. Desperate not to miss out, obviously, on a major tournament for the third time in a row. That would be brutal, wouldn't it? They kicked off their playoffs with a 1-0 win over Hungary in Budapest. A 60th minute strike from Martha Thomas was the difference between the two sides. It was a sixth consecutive competitive win for Pedro Martinez Losa's side. But how convincing are they looking, Susie? Or are they flattering to deceive?
I don't think they've looked totally convincing under Pedro Martinez Losa since he came in, to be honest. And again, I mean, the gap between the two sides, like on paper or in the FIFA rankings, is similar to the big gap between Wales and Slovakia, right? Like, this should be a game that they're winning comfortably, and I would have liked to have seen a few more goals. I think, like, the first half in particular, there was only that Caroline Weir effort that really kind of had any chance of them sort of creating anything in that first half. And Hungary threatened, like Dora Zella missed an open goal. That obviously were pretty convincing going through the sort of like Group B, League B. I can't remember how the thing works, but the second lot of groups.
It's always complicated.
Exactly. They got through that fairly straightforwardly. Like, that was fairly convincing, but this performance didn't really match the performances they'd shown there. That said, like, Martha Thomas's goal was lovely. I thought it was really, really nice. Really nice goal. But yeah, like, in theory, this should be a tie that they finish off fairly comfortably, you would like to think. But yeah, they've not quite got the best out of Weir and Cuthbert and, you know, Sam Kerr, as in Scottish Sam Kerr, not Australian Sam Kerr, obviously. For me, they've not quite got the best out of those midfield players. And yeah, like, that sort of is what needs to happen if they're going to step up a gear.
Yeah, they have had some of their players back, though, in stark contrast even to Wales, Emma, and Caroline Weir, arguably the most important of all of those, and it will take her a little bit of time to get back into full form.
100%. Like, a fit and firing Caroline Weir is one of the best weapons you can have in international football. So she will be crucial for them. You know, we saw her come back in the Champions League and look really strong there. So she's done pretty well, I would say, in her sort of early stages of her return. She's looked quite sharp to me. Obviously, there is still some way to go. But I think for me, that's the difference between, you know, Scotland and perhaps Wales, who we were obviously talking about before, where they're maybe reliant upon kind of, you know, their older, more experienced players. I think Scotland, don't get me wrong, Caroline Weir is obviously an experienced player, but Scotland for me just seem to have, you know, a few more match winners within the team than they're not necessarily relying on kind of one or two. There are real areas of quality throughout the pitch. I do think, you know, they maybe lack a little bit of depth, you know, when you look beyond that kind of starting 11, but certainly when you've got like Martha Thomas who can pop up with match winning goals, you've got Caroline Weir in there, you've got Erin Cuthbert in there. There's a lot of players in that Scotland team that I think, you know, can step up in the big moments. So I think they have enough to get through these playoffs. It's, you know, but as Susie says, they need to put in more convincing performances, because when they come up against, you know, the stronger sides or the more ruthless sides, then they are going to get found out if they're not playing to their maximum potential. But yeah, Caroline Weir, just so important for them.
Yep, she is, and will be tonight. Second leg kicks off at 7:35 up at Easter Road. Northern Ireland salvaged a draw away to Croatia with an unwitting star in Isabella Lionesses, scoring for both sides at the start and the end of the game. A bookend of goals, if you like. The first after 4 minutes for her own side, and then a 92nd minute own goal, meaning it finished Croatia 1, Northern Ireland 1. Tanya Roxtoby's side remain firmly in the tie. They head back to Windsor Park tonight. It was a really gritty performance, Amy. We had Tanya on the pod the other day. How important could that late goal prove to be? They also, like Wales and Scotland, have home advantage tonight.
Yeah, it's so important. It's, you know, kind of like the Wales goal. Like, it just gives you such a less daunting prospect for the second leg, and the home advantage and, the experience that Northern Ireland have in that squad and, some of the talent that's coming through as well. Like, I think they should be absolutely backing themselves at home to, all they're going to do is win the game. It don't matter by what scoreline, they're just going to win the game. And I think that, and obviously Tanya Ruszkai talking about some of the facilities and all the situation around the game as well. And, I think, at home with your facilities and your, everything that you can control, there should be no excuse really for them to go out and win that game. I think they can do it.
Yeah. Emma, you reported on Sunday that Northern Ireland had to cancel a training session while they were out in Croatia because of substandard pitches. Tanya Ruszkai questioned the lack of professional courtesy after the floodlights weren't turned on in time for a training session the night before that first leg. What's the update on this? She said that her players deserve better, and it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, that's right. Our BBC Northern Ireland team spoke to Tanya Ruszkai and some of the players, including the captain Simone McGill, at their sort of media day before the game, and they sort of reiterated that response, that they were disappointed by the facilities, disappointed by the general treatment. But I think there was a feeling that now that they are back on, obviously, Northern Ireland soil, it's okay, that's past us now, and we're in a position where they can control the controllables, as coaches like to say in football. So, like Amy says, I think just being back on home turf is an advantage for them. But yeah, I think it was a really frustrating story to report on, actually, when you're hearing these issues still happening at international football. I just don't think it's good enough. And I spoke to the Croatian FA, who said that they treat all of their teams with courtesy and said that the facilities were used by the men's Premier League team. But, floodlights coming on half an hour after a training session is due to be starting, that's not great. And that's the night before a crucial, Euro 2025 playoff. I don't think that would happen in the men's game.
No, not acceptable. Right, let's round things up with Republic of Ireland. There were comprehensive victories amongst the other playoff ties as well, by the way. Sweden beat Luxembourg 4-0. Czech Republic put 8 past Belarus. But there was a really convincing win in Tbilisi as the Republic of Ireland cruised past Georgia, scoring 6 goals without reply. It was a comprehensive victory. Susie leaves them with 1 foot firmly in round 2. That kind of scoreline, what does it show about Eileen Gleeson's side?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It shows that they're ready to kick on from having reached a first major tournament at the World Cup in 2023 in Australia. So, they've never qualified for Euros, so this is a big ask. And they were put in a really, really difficult qualifying group, obviously. We know it well with England, Sweden and France, really, really difficult group to get anything out of at all. So the fact that they've been able to sort of bounce off the back of that, get in a win in their final group game against France 3-1, and then, kind of go into playoffs with heads up and knowing that they can compete against those big sides, right? Like the worst scoreline in the group stage was 3-0 loss to Sweden. The rest of the games were all 1-0s, 2-0s, 2-1s. Like, they were tight. So they, the fact that they can do that against some of the biggest teams in the world, shows that they should be kind of comfortably beating teams like Georgia, and obviously lots of familiar faces on the score sheet as well. But yeah, it shows real progression from their World Cup campaign and a real desire to get back into a major tournament and be competing at the top end of the game. And the quality of players they've got in that squad now, I think there's a little bit more depth than they've maybe had before. There's some really, really good players playing across the Women's Super League, but also in the NWSL and stuff as well. And yeah, it's exciting to see that many players sort of kind of taking advantage of building up a big scoreline ahead of the second leg. I mean, scoring in the 97th and the 100th minute of that game shows that they really, really wanted to make their mark.
Yeah, big night tonight. Just a reminder, the second leg's all taking place on Tuesday evening. The winners then progressed to round 2 in the November-December international window. Let's head across the pond. Emma Hayes' USA have played Iceland in a double-header. They won 3-1 on both occasions, and it gave Hayes the perfect opportunity to start broadening the player pool available. Of the 26 players she called up, 6 were uncapped, while 14 have fewer fewer than 20 caps. Amongst the newly capped players, a standout was Emma Sears, who got an assist and a goal on her debut. It's a perfect opportunity, Amy, for Emma Hayes to refresh the squad, bring a new crop of players through, especially bearing in mind their recent resurgence at under 17 and under 20 level as well.
Yeah, and I think that the Federation did a really good job to schedule 3 games in this window as well. They got Argentina, I can't remember with the time difference, whether it's tonight or tomorrow night or whichever way, but just to get those fixtures kind of on a roll and sort of give her almost like no option but to rotate. Right, okay, show us the full depth and breadth of this player pool. And, there were a lot of players in there, you mentioned Emma Sears and, players that are kind of really new to the environment, but there are players in there that you're like, oh God, yeah, they've got them as well. So, Jaden Shaw, who didn't play at the Olympics really, I don't think she played at all. If not, she played a little bit off the bench because she was injured, only 19 or 20 now, and has impressed. Alyssa Thompson, who went to the World Cup last year as a teenager, has come in. She's not really been around it as much lately, come in after some decent form in the league and showing what she can do. And you add that to Mallory Swanson and Trinity Rodman and Sophia Smith, and they're going to have Mia Official back, and they're going to get Karina Macario back, and they've got Lynn Williams. It's really, really, really exciting, I think, if you're a fan of the US, and they've got quite a nice little window here to really move the team forward. Like Emma Hayes, boxed off that gold medal within a few weeks, and now she's got like a massive, massive gap to really build for the next World Cup. And, I think, maybe there's been a lot of questions about the US in recent years. Is their kind of power dwindling? Are the European teams catching up? This feels like a really good opportunity, a really big run up to the World Cup. And, it feels like they've got no excuse but to be really, really good there. And I can't see any reason why they won't be.
No, they're a frightening prospect ahead of the World Cup in 3 years' time. There was also an opportunity to say goodbye to a stalwart of the US women's national team, Kelly O'Hara, 3-time Olympian, double World Cup winner. She had her send-off in Nashville, hanging up her boots after 13 years and 160 caps, which is quite incredible statistics, Emma.
Yeah, it is. And I think, we've become a little bit accustomed to seeing quite a lot of US legends sort of hang their boots in the last year or two. And I think just touching on what kind of Amy's saying there about that, just really exciting crop of players that are coming through for this kind of new Emma Hayes era at the USA. It feels like part of that is also the transition of a lot of these kind of legends that are leaving the game. And it felt very much like a transitional World Cup for them in Australia and New Zealand. And, inevitably that was why it was a disappointing campaign. They sort of had a lot of young players that were inexperienced and then a lot of the older players who had kind of played their time. And it feels like we're now in that golden age of the happy medium. So, yeah, an incredible career, incredible stats to play for your country that many times is just absolutely phenomenal, and at the level that she has. So, nice to see her celebrated.
Yeah, and we mentioned there the under-17s and under-20s for the USA, but the Lionesses under-17s are doing brilliant stuff because the under-17 World Cup is continuing. The semi-final lineup is being set, and Natalie Henderson's England reached the Final Four for the first time since 2008. It was a dramatic penalty shootout win over Japan on Sunday night, meaning, they face Spain for a place in the final. The USA will take on North Korea. Producer Sophie is jumping on with us. You've just got back from the Dominican Republic. Nice tan. How have England been shaping up over the tournament? What are their chances on Thursday?
It's been a really exciting time, I think, for this under-17 group. They've had their problems at times. They've not always played their best, but I would say that with this group that Natalie Henderson has, they have a group of young players who have an extraordinary character, extraordinary resilience to dig in. There's a lot of quality as well there. They just maybe sometimes struggle to play their best at times, but they're finding a way to win games. And they came through a ridiculous game against Mexico about a week ago in the group stages. They were, behind. They were a player down. They came back and won it 4-2. And I think that just is kind of emblematic of kind of the character that's built through this England side. And they did the same against Japan the other night. They weren't down to 10 players, but they were 2-1 down. They came back. They came back twice from a goal down and then got to a penalty shootout. Brought on Rebecca Dowsett for the penalty shootout just for like 2 minutes before the penalty shootout, and she stands up and saves 2 penalties. So I think that just shows that it's a very exciting time for this team. They have bundles of character, and they will take the game to Spain. They play Spain in the European final in May in the championships. They lost there, but they learned a lot in that second half. And I wouldn't be surprised, from what I know about this team, they learned very, very quickly. And I think it will be a much, much closer game on Thursday.
Wonderful. Well, I hope. I assume that the final is going to be on Sunday if they make the final? Yeah. Okay, so hopefully on Tuesday's pod we will be discussing the world champions. Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, Soph. Right, so here we go again. The 2024 Ballon d'Or Awards took place in Paris last night. Aitana Bonmatí made it back-to-back wins, taking home the Ballon d'Or Féminine. Emma Hayes was named Coach of the Year after her successes with both Chelsea and the USA. Barcelona were named Club of the Year, while Jenny Hermoso picked up the Socrates Award for her humanitarian work off the pitch. Let's discuss the timing of the event afterwards. Let's first discuss with Susie whether there are any real surprises, whether that was about right, because that's usually the question mark that we have over these awards, don't they? They're not our favourites.
I don't think it's a terrible top 10, to be honest. I think it's a pretty solid top 10. I don't think there's any huge surprises. I think the biggest surprise, and Amy has been banging this drum for a very long time, is that Caroline Graham-Hansen hasn't been on the shortlist for like ever until this year. And I'd say she could have a shout for winning it this year. She's been so superb, arguably Barcelona standout player. So yeah, that is the only thing I would say, is other than overwhelmingly being a pretty strong top 10, that Caroline Graham-Hansen could have pipped Bonmatí potentially.
Yeah, but the timing of the event is what always raises eyebrows. I feel a little bit of deja vu going on, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure we spoke about this exactly a year ago, because the timing of the event is problematic. It always falls in the middle of International Week for the women. Many female players not injured can't attend because they're playing for their countries. This is what Serena Wiegmann had to say. She was nominated for Coach of the Year, by the way. It's really disappointing. It's a moment to celebrate women's football and to come together as a whole community in the women's football game and the whole football world. You want to be there, but we have a job to do. And we're here. It would be really helpful. She means Coventry / St George's Park. It would be really helpful if, and that could be planned on another date. Nag has sent us a message on social media. When will the people at the Ballon d'Or care enough about women's football to have the ceremony at a time when female footballers can attend? Ameé Ruszkai, discuss.
I would be more surprised if they moved it than if they didn't, is how I feel. And that's a bit of a crap way to feel, but that's just how I feel, honestly. I think it's a bit crap that you have to be injured to attend a Ballon d'Or ceremony as a women's football player. You know, I think, was it Beth Mead and Vivian Miedema went last year, which is great, but they both went because they're both out with ACL injuries, which is not great. Like, I don't know, like, you could have it on the Thursday. I don't know why they have to have it on a Monday. Nobody does anything on a Monday. That's why they close all the restaurants and stuff. People don't go out. Do you know what I mean? Put it on a Thursday or something. I don't know. I think there's a way to do it. I don't think they'll do it. It's just one of them rubbish things, isn't it? And you know, it's hard to know what else to say about it, really.
Yeah, I'm with you. Although it is important to note that Spain always allow their nominated players to go, even if they are due to be playing. Norway also allowed Caroline Graham-Hansen to go as well. It doesn't excuse the timing in the slightest, but you know, it's important to point out that some nations approach it differently, and perhaps this is England's choice to do it. Is it that important that the players needed to be preparing for South Africa in terms of team ethics? Yes, 100%, team culture, but these are friendlies, so maybe they could have been allowed, the three England players that were nominated. Lauren James, obviously, who's injured, Lauren Hemp and Lucy Bronze. But anyway, we did have a couple of emails, but we're going to read them out next week because they relate to the WSL. So thank you, Mamoaji, and to Tamsin as well. We have seen your emails on Women's Football Weekly at theguardian.com, but we will answer them next week, I promise. Panel, I absolutely loved that. It was brilliant. Amy, so lovely to see you. We won't leave it as long next time.
I feel like the seventh choice centre back or something.
No!
It's all right. I'm working hard to move up the pecking order. I'm putting effort in, and I'm doing my homework, and I'm doing my best, and I'll move up the pecking order in future.
You are our star player. Star player, 100%. Emma Sanders, Billy Big Time. I'm only joking. It's only because you said it. You said it, and I just latched.
That.
You said
Never
it at
said
the beginning of the pod, and I then latched onto it and have ruined you with it. So I'm sorry for that. But it's so lovely to see you.
Well, it was lovely until you called Amy the star player. So what does that make me? The second star player?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to have to put you on the subs bench for now. No,
Wow.
No. Listen. This pod has room for more than one star. I promise you. It's a team effort every time.
There's no star in team.
That's well, it depends. If you're Watford, there's an asterisk there, so you could argue that that's a star. Susie, it's just a delight to see you as always, but I need to see you in the flesh. It's a pleasure to see you always. Pleasure for you to be listening and taking part as well. Keep having your say. Send in your questions via X or email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. And as ever, a reminder to sign up for our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts Sign Up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmed.
This is The Guardian.